All right, let's talk about one of gaming's oldest and, honestly, most misunderstood genres, the adventure game. We're going to get to the bottom of what that name really means.
So when I say the word adventure, what pops into your head? You're probably thinking of big, epic action, right? Exploring forgotten temples, fighting off monsters. And yeah, a ton of games are all about that. But does that automatically make them adventure games?
Well, here's the twist. The answer is often a hard no. It turns out that adventure game might be one of the most misleading labels in all of gaming, and we're about to figure out exactly why.
So first things first, we have to draw a line between the feeling of having an adventure and the actual game genre called adventure. Believe it or not, they're two totally different things.
And this is where we get to the central paradox of the whole thing. You could have a game that's nonstop, adrenaline-fueled action, and it might not technically be an adventure game. But a quiet game about a detective solving a mystery on a single city block, that could be the perfect example of the genre. It's a bit confusing, I know, but that's what we're here to clear up.
Okay, so if it's not about the action, if it's not about these massive quests, then what is it that actually defines an adventure game? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple, and it unlocks this whole puzzle.
And there you have it. This is the bedrock of the entire genre. It's not about how well you can aim or fly a spaceship or manage an army. In a true adventure game, every single thing you do is there to serve one purpose: telling a great interactive story.
Think of it this way. If you're designing an adventure game, your main job isn't to build a fair combat system or a detailed in-game economy. Your job is to be a storyteller. You're building places, you're creating characters, you're crafting a plot, you're making a world where a specific story happens, and you're letting the player live inside it.
So with that huge idea in mind, that story is absolutely king, we can start to build a clearer, more formal definition of what an adventure game really is.
You know, at its core, it's just that, an interactive story. You, as the player, step into the shoes of a specific protagonist, and that person is a real character, not just some empty avatar. The whole gameplay experience is built around living that character's story and exploring their world.
Let's break it down a bit. The heart and soul of an adventure game is the storytelling, the exploration, and solving conceptual puzzles. Stuff like combat, managing money, or deep battlefield tactics, they're usually dialed way, way back, or they're not there at all. You see, you're not trying to outsmart an enemy. You're trying to solve the puzzles built into the narrative itself. And that's the huge difference between this and, say, an RPG or a strategy game.
Okay, this is all starting to click. But it still leaves one giant, obvious question just hanging in the air, doesn't it? Exactly. If the genre is all about story and puzzles and characters, why in the world is it called an adventure game? Why use a name that makes everyone think of action and excitement? Well, the answer isn't in what the genre is today, but in its history. And here's the big reveal. The whole genre is named after one single game. Way back in 1976, a text-based game called Adventure, sometimes known as Colossal Cave Adventure, was made. It was one of the very first interactive stories ever. And every game we call an adventure game today is a direct conceptual descendant of that one groundbreaking title.
So there's the punchline. When we say adventure game, what we really mean is an adventure-type game. A game made in the style of that original 1976 classic. It was never really about the feeling of adventure. It's always been about honoring the game that started it all.
So, we've solved the mystery of the name. Awesome. But why is this so important? Why does getting this definition right actually matter in the grand scheme of things?
Well, for a few really important reasons. First, it correctly frames the genre around its biggest strength, telling stories. Second, it gives a nod to the deep history of interactive fiction. But honestly, the most important reason is this. It shows off the genre's unbelievable creative freedom. When you don't have to include combat, or racing, or a strategy, an adventure game can be about literally anything. It could be a sci-fi mystery, a historical drama, a comedy, anything. It's arguably the most versatile genre in all of gaming.
And that really brings us to a final, pretty cool thought. An adventure game isn't held back by a need for specific mechanics. The only real limit is the imagination of the people making it. And that leaves us with a really exciting question to think about. What kinds of stories haven't been told yet, and what incredible worlds are just waiting out there for us to explore next?